Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast brought to you by Ollipop. My name is Brennan Drum. I'm here with Parker Thune, and we have Jesse Crittenton with us right now. Jesse is our editor at OU Insider. He and Parker were down in Arlington at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium today, checking out what Brent Venables, and they were there actually the past 2 days, checking out what Brent Venables, Steve Sarkisian, you name it, they had it covered as far as Big 12 Media Days went. And that's what we're going to talk about, along with, obviously, Oklahoma landed a massive commit today with 2024 four-star defensive lineman Jaden Jackson out of IMG Academy and teammates of one five-star defensive lineman David Stone, really good friends of David Stone as well. And we're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about what's next for Oklahoma. What can be the expectations? What needs fixed? What doesn't need fixed in fall camp after 6 and 7? Obviously, a lot of things need fixed. But what can Oklahoma piggyback off of out of the 2022 season that they can be proud of and kind of springboard into the 2023 season and more? But first, Parker, bring us in with that Ollipop.
Yes, Brandon. Well, for those of you that haven't tried Ollipop yet, head to drinkollipop.com to learn about all of Ollipop's health benefits. Look, to sum it up in one concise sentence for you folks, it's healthy soda. It's soda that's good for you. You go online, check them out at drinkollipop.com and use promo code CHAMPU20. You can get 20% off an online order, or you can pick it up in your local retailers. Walmart carries it here in Oklahoma, as does Target. You can find it in Whole Foods and in Sprouts as well. 9 grams of fiber in every can, never more than 5 grams of sugar, all natural sweeteners, all natural ingredients, and it comes in 14 flavors that taste exactly like whatever your preferred traditional soda tastes like. So, all in all, can't go wrong with Ollipop. It'll run you a little bit more than a traditional soda can by can, but the best investment you can make is an investment in your body. So treat your body right, treat yourself right. Drink Ollipop. By the way, I imagine we're already getting comments on the YouTube side from the people that are watching this about my outfit. This is called the it's July, Big 12 Media Days are over. The blacklist just ended in the most bizarre of fashions, and I don't know what to do with the rest of my month fit.
Sun's out, guns out, baby.
There you go.
And for those that don't know, this is my father-in-law's. We're at the beach house in North Carolina still. Tomorrow is our last full day, which will be Friday, last full day here. This will be week 2 here, but obviously I worked the whole time I was here. So vacation is a relative term, I guess, these days, because it's really never a full vacation in our industry. And then, but this is the theater room. And so I decided I was going to sit in here because it's the best sound barrier and everybody's walking in and out from the pool and the beach right now. So there's no way I could do it anywhere else. So anyways, that's just in case people are like, whoa, what the heck is this? This is crazy. He's talking in a theater. So just a little explanation. But speaking of explanations, and you guys were down in Arlington, you drove back today, I'm assuming? Straight after you guys got done, hopped in your car and drove up north up I-35. Biggest takeaways that you could gain from it. We're going to talk Bedlam, but what is your biggest takeaways outside of the Bedlam talk? Did any of the players say anything that maybe caught you off guard that was interesting to you? Maybe standouts that maybe you didn't think of that were standing out maybe this summer, taking that next step that may be able to help Oklahoma in the 2023 season? Like what was the biggest standout for you guys?
Yeah, I would say there were a couple of things that actually stood out to me. One from Brent's breakout session after his press conference. He was asked a question about Jaren Kanak, actually specifically, and about what he saw from him last year, what the expectations should be for him in 2023. And I actually thought Brent's answer was really interesting. Not only he started off by basically saying that they didn't have a lot of depth at linebacker last year, but then he went and specifically said that he knows now that he should have given the younger guys more reps last year and shouldn't have worried so much about mistakes. And I actually thought that was a pretty interesting, maybe confession is too strong of a word, but I thought that was a pretty interesting thing for him to say. And I thought it was pretty telling because he didn't have to say it. He said it specifically about Jaren Kanak, and I thought it gave some pretty good insight into what maybe the mindset is going into next year. And he went a little bit further and basically said that there's a lot of young guys on this roster that maybe deserve some playing time next year. He said that he feels like there's some more depth than they had last year, particularly on the defensive end. And he mentioned guys like Peyton Bowen, Grayson Halton. All that is to say, I thought it was pretty interesting that I think one of the legitimate complaints about the team last year, or criticisms about the team last year, was that some of these young guys, especially as the season started to kind of go sideways, weren't getting enough playing time. And Brent basically said, yeah, I worried too much about mistakes, and I should have just given those guys time on the field. And so it was kind of a little thing that I think if you blinked, you missed it. I actually thought that might have been one of the most interesting things said over the weekend.
It was certainly interesting to hear Venables bring that up, Jesse, and kind of make that concession, because that was something that, as I recall, when pressed on it, he was adamant last season that, hey, you know what, this is the hand we've been dealt. This is what we have to do in order to put ourselves in the best position to win. And it was funny when I did a radio segment toward the end of the day with Venables. He said, yeah, David Agwebu would probably have been better at defensive end, but we just really didn't have anybody that knew the playbook the way that he did and kind of knew the role at that inside linebacker position. So needless to say, he is much more pleased with the depth going forward, particularly with his linebacker group, but also you expand that conversation to the entire roster as a whole. And it really does feel like this 2023 recruiting class, guys, is going to be one that has an early impact, and that's not limited to one specific individual. He shouted out Jaquez Petaway several times as a guy that has made an early, or I guess opened some eyes throughout the summer. He just got here in June. Obviously, we saw what Peyton Bowen can do in the spring. Venables brought him up again. I thought it was really interesting and kind of confirmed some stuff I had heard throughout the week to hear Brent Venables give a lot of praise to Taylor Heim, the absolute last member of Oklahoma's 2023 signing class, a guy they offered a week before signing day and got committed just days before signing day. So it was very late in the process that the Sooners got in the picture with Taylor Heim. But let me tell you guys, that kid can fly, and he's got a little bit of work to do as far as the frame is concerned. But I'd heard some encouraging things thus far this summer about Heim's progress and just the way that he looked athletically comparative to the others at the linebacker position. And I thought it was some quality confirmation of that positive buzz to hear Venables say, yeah, I like where Taylor Heim's at. And you throw him into a room that already includes, specifically just looking at the freshman class, Phil Picciotti, who Brent Venables said had an amazing spring, and that's a direct quote. Sammy Omasigo, who's an absolute stud, top 100 prospect, top 5 linebacker in last year's cycle. And then Lewis Carter. Danny Stutzman mentioned that Lewis Carter benched 350 pounds 6 times in summer workouts, which, what that made me recall is, you want to talk about a transformation. Wasn't it, correct me if I'm wrong here, Brandon, but when Benny Wiley and the Kettlebells cleared out of town, wasn't it true that there wasn't an offensive lineman on Oklahoma's roster that was topping 300 pounds on the bench press?
That is correct.
So there you go. You got an incoming
The
freshman
famous
linebacker throwing up 350 pounds for 6 reps. That's how different Oklahoma is in 2023 from where they were in 2021.
The famous Jerry Schmidt quote, and plug your ears. I'm just going to tell you, if you got kids in the room now, plug your ears.
Brandon,
because the famous
censor yourself. It'll make
well,
it easy.
it's just an S word. It's an S word. I'm not using the rest of the other stuff. I'm going to use the S word, just kind of bring it home. But he walked through the weight room, like literally his initial meeting. I don't know if you've heard this, Jesse. It's hilarious. He walks through the weight room And he has like these players that are like walking with him and some of the strength and conditioning staff and all that. And he stops and he says, "What are those bands for over there?" And they explained it to him. And he goes, "Here's what we're going to do. We're going to stop right now. We're all going to walk over there and we're going to get this effing P90X shit out of here right now. Trash it." Like dead stop right there. They stopped exactly what they did. They walked over and started throwing all the bands away and all that type of stuff. It obviously they kept bands that they thought was normal, but we've all seen the Benny Wiley workouts before the games, right? Where they all came out there and they're like stretching their ankles and all that type of stuff from like the goal line to the 20 and back and all that type of stuff. Just very different than what you would see any other place. And that's fine. You know, everybody has their own niche, but I think the other thing we need to talk about is people are going to get Taylor Wine and Taylor Heim mixed up like crazy.
Imagine if those two guys are in the starting lineup by 2025. I
Was that
feel
the
for
D end or the linebacker?
yeah, exactly. It's not often I feel for Toby Rowland, but
Yeah.
As much trouble as he's probably going to have keeping Billy Bowman and Peyton Bowen's names apart the next couple of years,
Yeah.
he's probably going to have even all the more trouble keeping Taylor Wine and Taylor Heim straight.
And speaking of Taylor Wine, that's another guy that we've heard a lot about Taylor Hine, just his just growth. He's still slender, long, rangy, slender guy. He's put on weight, but he hasn't put on the weight that you would like for an interior linebacker just quite yet. But I talked to somebody about Taylor Wine the other day, and they brought it up themselves. And they said, "Let me tell you something about this cat." They said, "That guy right there might end up being the best of the best, not named PJ Adebawore when it's all said and done." And he goes, the source literally told me, like, when it came across Oklahoma's desk, his film, it happened the day after. Colton Vasek decommitted. The day after. They called it a godsend that happened because of they think so much of him and they think he's going to be so good. But moving on here, just a little bit more outside of what just stood out to you guys. Did any of the players say anything that maybe you kind of raised your eyebrows up a little bit, like, whoa, okay, didn't expect that?
Well, I'll go ahead and start here before I turn it over to you, Jesse. But one thing I want to add up front, one thing that is probably the thing that's ringing in my head more so than anything else that came out of media day was when I got the chance to sit down with Dillon Gabriel. One of the things he said was, and it was interesting to hear the starting quarterback acknowledge it, and I think it's a true sentiment, but just to hear it come from his mouth was honestly somewhat surprising. But he said, yeah, we had a lot of turnover, but it was good turnover. It was healthy turnover. And, that's the type of thing, that's the type of sentiment that as a quarterback, maybe you're reticent about expressing because you don't want to throw any of your ex-teammates under the bus, but we can all call a spade a spade. There were a lot of football players on Oklahoma's roster last year that were not good enough to be on scholarship at the University of Oklahoma. And that was kind of Dillon Gabriel's very muted way of confirming what we all knew. And Brent Venables, I don't know if he called it rehoming. That's kind of the term that we've used to describe what happened with the outbound portal exodus this offseason. But he said, yeah, we helped, and I forget what the exact number was, but he said, yeah, we helped however many players kind of find the door and find new homes. So this team is different in 2023 from a personnel standpoint, very different from the team that took the field in 2022. I think there are some question marks undoubtedly, and we'll expand upon that a little bit more as the season gets closer. But I think everybody's kind of on the same page internally about last year's team. And, I mentioned earlier that Venables really hit on linebacker depth and how much of an issue it was for Oklahoma last year. Those types of issues aren't going to be present this year because, In year 2, you have completely cold the fold. I mean, you got rid of the guys that you knew couldn't play right off the bat. And then some guys, you needed a year. You needed a season to find out that they couldn't play, at least not at Oklahoma's level. And so now that those guys have been shown the door, I feel like there ought to be a lot more confidence on both sides of the ball, and whoever Oklahoma trots out there, just knowing that this roster has kind of been constructed according to Venables' design at this point.
No, absolutely. And I'll just say, I honestly thought the biggest takeaway for me from the OU side of things was Jonah Laulu. I really thought I was really impressed with him. I honestly went into the week and when they announced, who each team was bringing to Big 12 Media Days last week, I was a little surprised that Jonah was on the list. I mean, I know he's a 6-year player. He saw some playing time last year, but I was a little surprised that that's who Brent selected to bring. And then it quickly became clear to me why. Not only because Jonah is a veteran on this team, but listening to Jonah talk, I mean, he said last year that he and the coaching staff had talked about that the interior defensive line might be where he's most comfortable. And then, obviously they officially made the switch during the spring. He's talked about how much comfortable he is there. And even Brent talked about that Jonah has, I think, the mental and physical freedom that Jonah has there on the interior defensive line has made me honestly put a little bit more stock into what kind of impact he can have. And just listening to him talk, Jonah sounds like a guy that's been through a lot. He's seen a lot. And I think he is finally in a place where he feels more comfortable. And I think he feels a lot more comfortable than he did last year. And along those lines, Jonah also, I know Parker will be happy. The first person that Jonah mentioned in terms of defensive young players that could have an impact an impact in the fall, first player he mentioned was R. Mason Thomas. So I know Parker is going to be happy about that. And so I thought Jonah's interview all the way around was really impressive. But then and then the other thing is I asked Brent about the wide receiver room outside of Jalil Farouk and Drake Stoops. How's that group developing with a lot of young guys? This is what makes me happy. And Parker knows this because I said his name several months ago on players I think will have a big role in the fall. First player Brent mentioned, Gavin Freeman. So I take that as an ultimate win. I've been high on him. I think there's a lot of ways it can go. But all of that is to say, I mean, whether it's Gavin, whether it's R. Mason Thomas, whether it's Ashton Sanders that got a shout out, whether it's Jaren Kanak, I think all that is to say, I think from the coaching staff all the way down to the players, there is more of an awareness that there are younger players on this roster that need to play. They should have played more last year. With this incoming 23 class, with some of these second-year guys that come from last year, there's some youth that just needs to play. They should have played last year. They need to play more this year. That was honestly my overall takeaway.
So on that note, did it feel like when Brent was talking about it, did it feel like it was kind of, I guess, him admitting that they win several more games if they at least rest up some of the starters during the game, sub them out, mistakes made here or there, you still have the legs to possibly hold out and win a ball game if you're not playing 100 snaps a game. If you're Danny Stutzman, if you're, Jalen Redmond, if you're trying to think who else, Ethan Downs, like those guys played an inordinate amount of snaps. Yeah. Billy Bowman, like it was ridiculous that they never left the field. Was that kind of him admitting like, dude, I kind of jacked this thing up by not subbing them out and letting them rest, and their legs are what cost us? Mistakes were made anyways. Might as well have been young guys making the mistake and fresh, getting our older guys fresh by the end of the game. Is that kind of what he was saying?
Yeah, I think so. And also I think, it's hindsight is 2020, right? And so Venables is going to see things now in July that he maybe didn't see in November, for instance. But there are two very hand-in-hand perspectives, two ways to look at the composition of the Sooners defense last year that kind of juxtapose one another, at the very least tangentially relate to one another. And so one way that you can look at, and I think that's the way that Brent Venables looked at it at the time, was, okay, we have no better alternative. We got to run these horses into the ground because whoever we bring off the bench is not going to give us as good of a chance to win as the guy we have on the field right now, tired as he may be. And then the other side of that coin is, and I think most specifically of a guy like Jaren Kanak, regardless of how much he doesn't know, how inexperienced he is, this is what Brent seemed to be kind of coming around to yesterday. Regardless of how inexperienced a guy like Jaren Kanak is, regardless about how uneasy I am about his ability to execute his assignment in this defense, he's one of our top athletes, and we just got to let him go. And it feels like there was that almost that sense of regret. And I don't know if it was a true regret, but you could feel tinges of regret in what Brent said about the way that he handled the defense last year. And I think, we talked about it at the time, all throughout the fall. We were wondering, okay, why isn't Jaren Kanak seeing the field more? Why are they holding him out? Why is he only getting in garbage time? Because we knew how athletic he was. Everybody knew how athletic he was, what a freak he is physically. But Brent said time and again, he's just not ready. And so that's the balance you have to strike. Do you roll with the guys can get the job done, or at a certain point do you turn things over to a guy that might get the job done better or might not get it done at all?
Yeah.
I'll add quickly onto that to Brandon, what you asked and what Parker just said. I think it really comes back to the number one word, the theme for OU at Big 12 Media Days was efficiency. That was the theme, and the efficient. And I think it all kind of summed up into what Brent was talking about in terms of the youth. I think one of the things he talked about was he should have played those younger guys more because of what you said, Brandon, that there were just tired legs at the end of games. And you could look at the stats for OU's offense and defense on 3rd and 4th down last year. Brent mentioned that multiple times, that both sides of the ball simply have to be better. And it was really hurtful because of the amount of close games that the team lost last year. So I think for him, it was more about, maybe some of these players aren't quote unquote ready, but there were games OU lost simply and they were close games they lost last year because they were tired, they were exhausted, they weren't executing, and they put heavy snaps on some of these guys when these young guys may not have the experience, but they have the talent. They should have been out there to play. So I think, if anything, we've heard Brent talk about complementary football before, but he talked about efficiency over and over. And I think that's the thing going forward, is not only that he feels better about the depth, but it's trying to avoid those late game issues. I mean, when you lose 4 games by 3 points, at some point, it's not that you're completely out of these games. It's about what can you do to avoid that issue moving forward. And I think the thing he's pinpointed is, we've got to get more guys into the game. We've got to get more young guys reps in these games, not only to give the starters or the older guys breaks, but also to get them in-game experience.
Do you all get a sense that there was a kind of a steady confidence from the players? Like last year, it seemed like they came in, they were confident, but they were confident because of the logo on the side of their helmet. And that's what gave them confidence. Do you think there's a different type of confidence this year, mainly because they know what needs to be done, what's expected? Like last year was almost like trial by fire, right? Like you were still trying to get your roster set up. You're still trying to figure out the best way to help Dillon Gabriel run the offense. And it looked like, to me, the bowl game was the right way to go about doing it. You played a top 10 team and you took them down to the wire. If you had more depth, mind you were playing without 4 starters on the offensive line in that game. You have more depth in that game, you probably come out with a win. but the legs just kind of wore out, just like it did the throughout the whole season. Come the end of the fourth quarter, legs worn out. Do you think they're looking at that now with the transfers they they brought in, with the top 5 class that they just brought in, and obviously on piggybacking off of in 2022, top 10 class, one of the top 10 transfer classes as well, back-to-back season, as Parker alluded to earlier in the podcast. This is Brent Venables' roster now.
Yeah.
Like, the excuses for everything that's going on can be minimal at this point, because outside of a handful of guys, those are his dudes. He chose the guys that stayed. He pushed out the guys that he didn't want and brought in new ones. So now he has to live and die by with what he's got on the roster. Having said that, do you think that confidence, that there is kind of a different type of confidence, like they think they can get it done just because they're in year 2, they're more, feet are on both ground, not like just waving around like on a unsteady boat type deal. Like, they really know what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, and how to accomplish that feat.
I will say it's one thing that Dillon Gabriel brought up in my conversation with him at the very beginning of the day today. He said, look, everybody just has, and I'm paraphrasing here, obviously, but he said, everybody just has a much clearer sense of what they need to do and how they need to do it. Everybody understands their particular assignment better than they did at this point a year ago. And he said, look, we've spent the whole offseason focusing on details, being very detail oriented. And he pointed back to last season's 6-7 mark, which of course was highlighted by those 5-1 possession losses, and point out the fact that, hey, these games historically for us have come down more often than not to a single play here and a single play there. And yet it's one of those plays that burns us. And when I asked him at the end of our interview what his primary objective this season is as Oklahoma's starting quarterback, he was very direct, very straightforward. He said, look, it's to win, to find a way to win. And I think that is collectively going to be the mission for Oklahoma heading into 2023, is just, yes, on a broader scale, finding a way to win, sure. But if you want to break that down to the details, what that includes is finding a way to make those 2 or 3 plays, or not make those 2 or 3 mistakes that left you on the wrong end of a very close football game time and again a season ago.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that, I mean, I think all of that is spot on. And I've said this multiple times before. I don't think it can be overstated how much of a change it was for the entire program to go from Lincoln Riley and his staff to Brent Venables and this staff, both schematically, expectations on the field, to conduct and expectations off the field. I mean, it's night and day in every way, and I know you guys know that too. It's night and day. So I think there is just, I think the overall vibe has just been, there is in almost every sense, there's just a general feeling of comfortability on the field, off the field. Now, that doesn't mean that's an excuse for last year. It doesn't mean it's going to turn into wins next year. But I do think for this program as a whole, it was a really huge change to undergo. Now there is some continuity. There are players returning from last year that are going to play, or they're going to play big roles on both sides of the ball. And I do think you can't overstate how important that comfortability really is.
So I guess on that feat and on that, or on those grounds, how do you guys feel this season's going to go? I think we've got to roll into it. The Big 12 media days are over. What is your gut feeling now after being around the players, being around the coaches? Where do you see the 2023 season going? And I think there was something else that was really talked about quite a bit. I know they talked about it with Cincinnati, the homecoming, how big a day they're making, Big 12 days, the homecoming days, or whatever. They're making a big event. And I think it's week 4 for Oklahoma, right? They go to Cincinnati. Is that correct?
Week 4, September the 23rd.
And they're making a big deal about it. That place is gonna do you think that's being overstated as the first possible hiccup for Oklahoma, or can you see that happening? Like, I know that they've got a really good D line. I know there's a lot of stuff that Cincinnati has as far as talent goes, but and I know Oklahoma just came off 6-7, so yeah, I know we can see it happening, and I know we can see it. But do you guys feel that this team is going to be better made for road wins like that, and that maybe this is being kind of blown out of proportion, how big the atmosphere may be too tough for the team, all that type of stuff? Because that's the type of stuff you're starting to hear rumbling and mumbling all in the background when it comes to Oklahoma. Oklahoma's first loss could be Cincinnati on the road, Big 12 homecoming day, big atmosphere, all that type of stuff. What's your gut on all that?
I mean, does Cincinnati have the opportunity to be a pitfall for Oklahoma on the road? Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I would say you don't have to look any further than the fact that it's the first conference game for Oklahoma for evidence of that, because you reflect on last season, and I know Venables said it today, last year has no bearing on this year, but you look at last season, the Sooners coasted with little issue through non-conference play. Their first opponent was Kansas State. They came to Norman. Most felt of the same accord with regard to that football game, and said Oklahoma was going to win comfortably. Needless to say, that did not happen. So there's going to be, after you get done playing Arkansas State and SMU and Tulsa, there's going to be that temptation to fall into a sort of apathetic state and just kind of coast. Now, Brent Venables knows this better than anyone, and he's going to preach to his team that they can't allow themselves to get lackadaisical as Big 12 play approaches, even if you got a couple of perceived cupcakes in Cincinnati and Iowa State, which I would very much expect to be in the bottom half of the Big 12 this upcoming season. But is it being overhyped? No, I don't think so. I think that's the type of game that if you really want to set the tone for the remainder of your season, what's going to dictate how Oklahoma's season goes, especially with the schedule as easy as it is, somewhat being backloaded with those tougher matchups, the game that's going to really set the trajectory of the majority of Oklahoma's season is going to be that Texas game in week 6. But you can't be so eager for revenge on Texas that you're looking past Cincinnati and Iowa State once Big 12 play rolls around, because that's where one of those teams, and those are two very historically well-coached teams, that's where one of those has the opportunity to trip you up. And so, yeah, the mission for Oklahoma is not only going to be get past Cincinnati and get past Iowa State, but blow through those two teams and leave no doubt.
No, I agree. I think the biggest opportunity for OU to send a statement that this year is different is that week 4 game against Cincinnati. It's not about Cincinnati. I like Parker. I don't expect Cincinnati to be at the top of the conference. I don't expect them to compete for a Big 12 title. But after a relatively easy non-conference schedule, week 4 on the road against an opponent OU has only ever played twice. That's an opportunity to send a statement about the way the rest of the season is going to go, not to mention the way the start of conference play went for them last year, losing their first 3 conference games. So I think as far as expectations, I honestly thought OU finishing 3rd in the preseason poll was about right. That's not to say they can't win it. That's not to say they don't have the talent to win it. It's not. I think 3rd puts them firmly in contention for a Big 12 title. It's acknowledging that last year was really tough, but that a lot of people expect this year to be better. But honestly, I think I'm gonna know, not that you can know everything from one game, but I think I'm gonna know everything I need to know, kind of like Parker said, from that Cincinnati game, from that Iowa State game. Those are games OU should handedly win. If those are close games, or if either of those games OU loses, then yeah, you have to be concerned. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, Big 12 Media Days, that's an easy time for the players and Brent Venables to say about how disappointed they are in last year and how they need to play complementary football. They need to be more efficient. They have more depth on defense. This is the easy time of year to do it. If you really want to prove that, it's week 4 and week 5 to open conference play, especially considering how disappointing their start to conference play was last year.
Quick aside, Did anybody else catch Brent Venables send a shot across the bow at Miami earlier today at Media Days? I thought that was hilarious and completely out of nowhere. He poked fun at their Middle Tennessee loss, poked fun at the fact that they got blown out 45 to 3 at the hands of Florida State. And I'm just wondering, like, where did that come from? Why did Brent Venables wake up this morning and choose violence against Miami? Does he and Mario Cristobal have beef? Does he just hate bag schools? Does he prefer Pacific
I got
beaches
it.
to Atlantic beaches? I have no idea.
No, I think the beach thing may have some. No, we all know what it's about, Parker. What happened today?
Yeah, we got a pretty good idea, I suppose.
And you can be rest assured that Miami probably tried to come in and swoop in with their life wallet bag last second to win out on the Jaden Jackson sweepstakes. On top of that, who else are they battling for? Who do most people consider OU 1, Miami 2 with right now?
David Stone.
Yeah. So those shots were taken to make sure it got out in the ether, and maybe those kids read it, or all the kids, because and not to mention Devon Mitchell, they just literally tried to buy Devon Mitchell. Like, we all know that. And James Nesta, like, they've been battling and battling and battling. Wyatt Gilmore, Oklahoma and Miami have been, I mean, at each other's faces on the recruiting trail. And the best part about this is not only is Brent Venables literally smiting Miami Hurricanes and Mario Cristobal, but he's like 5-0 versus them on the recruiting trail right now too. He has not lost to him yet. He stole RMT in 2022, right?
That's right. That's right.
He
Miami did get Ahmad Moten, though.
His brother was there. That was the fact that Oklahoma almost pulled that off is more telling than Miami winning that one. Am I not correct on that?
True. Now
Yeah,
Miami did flip Caleb Spencer last cycle. Can't forget about that. But
yeah, there's some people that have some very slanderous things to say about that one, but well, that's neither here nor there.
Recently, though, it's a good point. The fact that Oklahoma's really been on a heater in head-to-head recruiting battles against Miami.
Dude, the Miami
very
fans
curious,
hate OU right now. They absolutely can't stand it. Their boards are freaking. They're just exploding. They're like, dude, they're just kicking our ass up and down.
And we know,
the recruiting
right?
trail.
We know that John Ruiz is a rather vindictive human being.
Yeah,
so
you're probably
gonna
throw $5 million at Stone.
Exactly. Like, at what point? And OU fans are praying that nothing fishy goes on with Stone and that he ends up a Sooner. But like, at what point is John Ruiz just going to go, okay, I don't care how much it costs me, I'm going to stick it to OU?
I think you're probably there. I think you're probably
10 million, 15, 20.
But here's the worst part, and we talked about this, Parker and Vans. This is not hyperbole. I honestly believe Oklahoma would throw it out there. I do. That's what they've been doing this cycle when it comes to defensive guys or even tight ends. They're like, nah, come over here, bro. We got you some NIL. They're not playing around. Like, but we talked about this, and Jesse, I know this is totally off topic. We're going to get back to the Big 12 Media Day. We talked about this on the live the other day, and even in podcasts throughout this last few weeks. The 2024 class is essentially where Oklahoma felt like they were going to be able to have the NIL to really go all in on this stuff. And they're doing it, and they're doing it big. And if the trends continue to happen, like, apparently LSU's like 4th for Dominic McKinley and OU's number 1, and by a large margin, they say. Like, who saw that coming? Now, obviously, he's not announcing till the Under Armour game, but Parker, come on, man. Like, we've been sitting there saying, watch out for LSU, watch out for LSU. And their own reporters are saying, yeah, I don't know, man. If he doesn't show up at the end of July, this thing might be a wrap. So Like, it's just crazy what's going on.
At
Anyways,
which
well,
point
go
Todd
ahead.
Bates can light him a stogie.
No joke, man. That guy, he's on one right now, especially if he lands Stone here in the next month or so. And he's also one of the lead guys on the Win Aries, so he might need to. He might just be, he's gonna be on a heater, dude. All right, we'll get to the recruiting talk though. Like, we'll dive deep into it here in just a minute. Before we do that, let's finish up the team talk. Did you say you had the prediction of Oklahoma going third in the Big 12, Jesse?
No, I said I thought I thought them being third in the preseason poll
Okay,
was
okay.
fair. I thought that was fair. I
It was,
expect,
very, very much fair. 6 and 7, heck yes.
yeah,
Right.
I expect OU to be. I expect OU and Texas to be playing for a Big 12 title in December. That's my expectation. But considering they finished 6 and 7, considering Kansas State won it last year, they should be in the
Yeah.
mix. TCU, I know they lost a lot of guys, but they just went to the playoff. I thought them finishing third is fair, but I expect OU and Texas to be in Arlington playing for a Big 12 title in December. That's what I expect.
Okay, Parker. Jesse, am I crazy for thinking that Texas is not going to make the Big 12 title? And I think it's going to be OU, Kansas State.
Are you
No.
crazy? Are you crazy? No, I don't think so. And I think we've dived into this before on previous podcasts. It's a wide open year in the Big 12.
It is.
Part. Like there is an upper echelon. There's a first tier and there's a second tier. But there are at least 5 or 6 teams in that top tier that could reasonably make a run to the Big 12 championship. I think things are set up very nicely for Texas Tech to win double-digit games. And I mean that. Now, looking at Oklahoma's schedule, just knowing what we know about this coaching staff and about the talent they brought in via the portal and the recruiting trail, I have the most trust in Oklahoma of any Big 12 team. But they're not going to be without competition for the rights to go to Arlington in December, because there are easily at least 5 teams in this conference that I see a very viable path to the conference championship for.
So
I completely agree. And I think Kansas State, if you told me right now Kansas State is winning the Big 12, like that's who's going to win it, wouldn't shock me at all. Texas Tech, even TCU wouldn't shock me.
So who do y'all have winning the Big 12? I'm going to say Oklahoma, even though I think they're going to go. I have them 10-2 or 9-3 this year. I don't think a Big 12 team makes the playoffs. I just can't see it right now. And I hope to God I'm wrong for Oklahoma fans. I feel like 10-2 is probably the right thing. I was at 9-3. I was really sold on 9-3, 8-4 until I started really dissecting their schedule, and I was like, there's legitimately 9 wins on that schedule. Like, realistically, they're going to be favored in every game except for Texas, right?
Sure.
So saying 10-2 is not an outlandish statement. And that's where I kind of went with 10-2, because I was at 9-3, 8-4 for the longest time. Parker, you can vouch for that. I did not expect Oklahoma. And then the more I dove into that schedule, man, I was like, dude, there's like 9 almost sure wins. All Oklahoma's got to do is not be stupid, which, yes, I know after 2022 season, that's not a guarantee. There's a lot of stupidity out there in 2022. But when you look at that schedule, it's like win, 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 toss up, win, win, toss up, win, toss up. Like, I think the 2 scariest games is TCU off a short week from BYU and Texas. And then maybe a third scary game. And that's kind of where I got to the 9-3 was at Cincinnati. I thought those were the games that could be considered quasi toss-ups, road games, all that type of stuff, short weeks. Obviously, OU Texas, Red River rivalry. But when it got down to it, I was like, Oklahoma's going to be playing for the Big 12 title most likely. Now, I could see K-State winning it. I could see Texas winning it. Those are the three. Like, I really do have a good feel that they're going to compete for the Big 12 title. The fourth, Parker, you named it Texas Tech, but that would be like the biggest nightmare if you're Texas, Texas A&M, or Oklahoma, for Texas Tech to become good in the Big 12 consistently, because Joey McGuire can recruit his butt off, and they would become better than what Mike Leach had it. That's scary. Luckily, Oklahoma would be gone, but anyways, that's where I'm at with this. Is my synopsis of it? Am I wrong? Am I too far off? Like, what y'all's got?
I'm almost embarrassed to say my gut.
That's how I felt when I said 10-2, bro. So go for it.
No,
Because I was 9-3, 8-4 forever.
I'm gonna fall victim. I know I'm going to. We have 15 years of evidence that Texas underwhelms despite all of the talent on paper in the world.
Oh, you got Texas's back. You're Texas's back, right?
I'm embarrassed with myself. I honestly hate myself right now. I do. I know. Look, this isn't like, oh, they should have been better last year. Since they made the NCAA title game in 2009, they have consistently underwhelmed every year.
Yeah.
I know that.
But the odds are in your favor. Eventually, it's got to work in your favor.
That's the thing. If you just keep betting, at some point,
It's gonna hit.
It's gonna be right. But to your original point, no. I was high on Kansas State going into last season. It would not shock me in any way if they won it. It wouldn't shock me at all if Oklahoma won it. It shocked me last year that they went 6-7.
Yeah.
But they have talent. If you told me they went undefeated, it wouldn't shock me. If you told me they had another disappointing season, it wouldn't shock me. Texas, you could tell me they win 5 games next year or in 2023. Wouldn't shock me. But talent-wise, this also feels like a pivotal year for Steve Sarkisian and that coaching staff. I think if you're Texas and you underwhelm again the year before going to the SEC, that's a pretty tough look for that coaching staff. All that being said, I think there's a lot of ways this thing could go. OU is absolutely in the mix. The goal should absolutely be to win a Big 12 title because that is absolutely realistic. Having said that, my very tentative guess is that Texas and OU play in the Big 12 title game and Texas wins.
Look at Jesse carrying the water for Steve Sarkisian. Never thought I'd see the day. The horns got to him. He's buying the propaganda. But no, in all seriousness, wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't that be a fun storyline if OU and Texas are battling it out for the Big 12 championship 8 months before saying peace out to the conference? That would be quite the little flourish on the way out the door. But if I had to pick 2 teams that stand above the rest, I don't think it's a hot take to say it's OU and Texas. I've been down this road with Texas enough times to figure that they're going to trip up somewhere along the way. And yeah, it's somewhat unpredictable year to year as to who Texas is going to struggle with. But there always seems to be at least 3 or 4 instances somewhere along the line where Texas has persistent issues and can't get past a team that on paper they should beat handily. And so that's why I honestly lean toward Oklahoma matching up in the Big 12 championship game with a team that has a strong organizational culture from the top down, a team that develops and maybe doesn't recruit as well as Texas, but that gets the most out of their players, plays sound football, and doesn't have the peaks and valleys that we all have come to know are common to this era of Longhorns football. So yeah, Kansas State and Texas Tech are 2 teams that I feel like fit the bill quite nicely. And my sleeper team in this Big 12, man, is easily the Kansas Jayhawks. I have made it no secret that I am a huge fan of Lance Leipold. And with Jalen Daniels at the controls, the floor relative to some of the other programs in the conference is pretty low, but it's also a very, very high ceiling.
So you would have Oklahoma traveling to Lawrence as one of those games that could be detrimental to their season.
Well, and it feels kind of weird to say that, right? Because Oklahoma hasn't lost to Kansas since 1997, but Oklahoma hadn't lost to West Virginia ever in Big 12 conference play until last season, and they hadn't lost to Texas Tech in 12 years. So there have been some winning streaks that have come to an end as of late. I mean, heck, 2017 when they dropped the game at home to Iowa State, favored by 31 points or whatever it was. Iowa State hadn't beaten Oklahoma in Norman since 1960. So again, streaks are made to be broken. And would I pick Kansas over Oklahoma in that football game? Not as of right now on July 13th, but you're definitely going to be in for a battle, much like you were when Kansas made the trek down to Norman last year and hung in that game throughout and eventually lost 52-42 in a shootout.
So my deal with Texas, Jesse, just to kind of piggyback off what you were saying, is that I have a funny feeling that there's going to be a split team and split locker room, split fan base with obviously Arch Manning and Quinn Ewers. Like I legitimately believe that there's going to be some issues during the season, whether Ewers gets nicked up, obviously, and I know they've got other quarterbacks, but let's say Quinn Ewers gets nicked up and Arch comes in and just does a really good job. Well, now you've got the biggest name in college football. I don't care what anybody says. Arch Manning is going to be the biggest name in college football regardless, outside of Caleb Williams, obviously, just because of who he is, right? Like that's and where he's playing. If you play at Texas, Oklahoma, Alabama, whatever your name is, Arch Manning, you're going to be a face of whatever, no matter if you're second string, third string, your name carries weight. And so do you all not think that there's a chance that that could be kind of a hiccup for them during the season, that there could be some divisiveness within that locker room if things don't go perfectly for them?
No, I agree. I've said something similar. Not only I think just because I think I mean, it seems like there's incredible pressure on Texas every year, but I think this year in particular, they might face the highest expectations and pressure they've ever faced with the SEC move on the horizon, that they were voted to win the Big 12 just last week, that they disappointed again last year when they probably should have been in the mix. But yeah, Brandon, I think you're right. I think if this thing goes, I think if Texas underwhelms the first half of the season, that is absolutely the recipe for the Quinn Ewers versus Arch Manning debate to heat up. There's a lot. That's why I honestly feel embarrassed. It's about picking Texas. It's not just because of the last 15 years of evidence. It's because there's a lot of ways this could go wrong for Texas. I think there are more ways that it could go wrong for Texas this year than there are ways for it to go wrong for any other program. And I think the Quinn Ewers versus Arch Manning thing is at the heart of it.
Parker, anything?
I would just add, like, if there does arise a quarterback controversy in Austin, I would not forget about Malik Murphy either, because I think there's going to be a good contingent of that fan base and perhaps folks in the booster circle that are actually clamoring more for Malik Murphy than Arch Manning. I wouldn't rule that out. But again, that's several steps down the line. Obviously, if it all falls into place for Texas, that conversation never arises. But no, my constant assertion and observation with this football team is that with the knowledge that you lose Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson out of that backfield, you cannot somehow be more confident in Texas in the year 2023 than you could in 2022. And so I would rather be proven wrong because Texas wins 10, 11 games than proven wrong because they only win 7 or 8. So I view Texas as a middle of the road football team. once again.
So who do you have winning the Big 12? Everybody, I'll name mine. I'm going to go. I'm going to say Oklahoma, just because, and this sounds super homery, and I really don't give a crap, because they've ran the Big 12 for almost 3 decades. I think if you're going to go out, you go out on top. If they don't win it, I think it'll be K-State. That's my gut, and that's where I'm coming from on that.
I've
Who do you got,
got
Park?
I've got Oklahoma over Texas Tech.
And you've got Texas, right?
Yeah, well,
Boo, Jesse.
now I'm more embarrassed because I can't disagree with anything Parker said. Plus, I have the horrible feeling that I'm just trying not to be the biggest homer ever, even if Oklahoma.
That's fine.
Sir.
You create balance on this podcast. That's what some people will say. 2 homers and a realist.
Yeah, there you
Well,
go. You know what? I'm okay with getting the homer label as long as I'm labeled a rational homer.
There you go. Fair enough.
Can disagree with my take, but as long as you respect it, we're cool. As long as you can respect it based on the argument that I present.
There you go.
Last thing I'll say is I'm completely preparing for Texas to absolutely crap the bed and be not even anywhere close to the Big 12 title game. I'm completely preparing for that reality.
Yeah, he says history tells me my pick sucks.
Can't argue that. Can't argue it. Not going to. Can't.
I love it though. You're still on that. You're still standing on that hill. Literally. Wolverine.
I can't change now because you guys have presented. I can't. I have to stay with it. It's gonna make me look wishy-washy. I have to do it. I have to stay.
No, that's fine. I mean, there's other radio hosts out there in the Oklahoma City market that will literally change their mind, and they'll be like, "Told you so! I told you so!" I'm not gonna name names or anything.
We all
like
know
that.
who you're talking.
Yeah. All right. So, Jesse, what for Oklahoma to win the Big 12? What do they need to do? Defensively, offensively, I know everybody's going to say the D line needs to be better on defense, but offensively, what do you think needs to be done for it to get to that point?
Well, I've said all along that I think all of OU's hopes of winning the Big 12 title rests on defense. But if you're looking at the offense, it absolutely starts with being more efficient with their possessions, which I know is what Brent Venables said earlier. But the reality is, I'm not saying OU's offense was perfect last year. I'm not saying Dillon Gabriel was perfect. The stats, for the most part, were pretty good last year. The thing that hurt them was because the defense was weak, there were times when OU's offense simply needed to be able to control the game. And I don't think Jeff Lebby and this offense ever found a cohesion or a middle ground between running with the pace they want to run with and also recognizing that there are times they need to control the game. They need to control the time of possession. OU was so far at the bottom nationally in terms of teams who had, or in terms of the time of possession game, which is working fine if you're scoring enough that it doesn't matter, but OU didn't score enough to make that a problem, or to make that not a problem. So I think ultimately, all the questions need to go to the defensive side of the ball, but if you're looking at the offense, it's that this offense simply needs to find times where they not only should possess the ball, but they can, which starts with the running game. So I think all that is to say, I think this season is going to be ultimately important for Javante Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk and whoever else runs in that backfield and this offensive line to be able to run the ball and control the game and take the pressure off that defense. I expect the defense to be better, but the defense already wasn't good last year, and the offense didn't help take the pressure off them. So the offense needs to control the pace. They need to find that balance between running fast and knowing when to slow it down, and then being able to execute.
Oh, sorry. Was it my turn? No, so from where I stand, in order to win the Big 12, and I think, Jesse, your point is outstanding, and I think it's probably the most conspicuous point, which is to say that Oklahoma needs to be better at managing pace offensively, and also they just need to improve overall defensively. We all kind of understand that. To me, I mean, those are the easy things. If I had to dig a little bit deeper, I think it comes down to getting pressure on the quarterback. If I had to be a little bit more specific than just playing well defensively, the Sooners are going to be able to do that, in my estimation, because of how many capable contributors they have available off the edge at both defensive end positions, between the incumbents, Ethan Downs and Reggie Grimes, and the portal newcomers and Rondell Bothroyd and Trace Ford, and the youngsters and PJ Adebawore and R. Mason Thomas and potentially Taylor Wine. I think there's a lot there to work with. And if you can have confidence in all of those guys to give you solid situational snaps and not get blown off the line, put pressure on the passer, set the edge in the run game, if you can use those guys' specific skill sets to your advantage situationally, I think what's going to happen is you're going to be able to generate a lot more pressure on the quarterback when you get into third down situations, and it's going to be harder for teams to stay on the field against Oklahoma a year ago. And everybody kind of points to the linebacker play. I feel like Danny Stutzman and David Agwebu kind of became the target of fans' frustration a year ago, but almost lost in all of that frustration was the reality that Oklahoma was not good at all in terms of pressuring the quarterback. And as long as you can improve that, and I think as I said, I think there are multiple guys on this roster that are capable of giving you 5 or 6 sacks. And if you have 3-4 guys give you 5 or 6 sacks apiece, I think what that adds up to, I think you have the recipe for not necessarily a dominant defensive unit, but one that's going to be good enough to get you over that double-digit win hump and put you in the hunt for Arlington. Brandon, I don't think we can hear you.
Well, that's because I turned my mic off. There you go. I said, Jesse, your as Parker alluded to just a minute ago, the tempo point for the offense was perfect. I think it's all well and good to go fast pace, but there has to be a time where clock eating has to be of number one of importance, especially if you're winning a ball game. Not only that, if you can feel as a head coach, you need to be able to tell Jeff Lebby, hey, let's slow it down a little bit here. I know you want to, if you get a first down, I know you want to rush up, and I know you want to, get to the tempo going and all that, but the defense is a little worn out right now. Let's give them a break. Let's eat some clock so that they're not on the field 100 snaps this game. That would be great. And so I think that's one thing. I think the other thing, sorry, as I'm getting stuffed up here. The other thing for me is the defensive line. I don't think any of us worry about the edge at all on the defense. I think when you look at it, you got R. Mason Thomas, you have Rondell Bothroyd, you have Ethan Downs, you've got PJ Adebawore, you have Trace Ford. Like, I just named 5 dudes that would probably start on a probably 80 to 90% of college football teams, like right there. So you're not really worried about the edge. The issue still is going to be depth on the interior. They've got Dejon Terry from Tennessee, really good player, really good get. All you hear is just rave reviews about him since he's arrived in Norman, how he's going to change the interior of the defensive lineup for him, particularly adding more depth, but talent as well. Then you have Grayson Halton, who has been, everybody's talked about how great he's been, how much weight he's put on, all that type of stuff, and just his ceiling. No matter who you talk to in Norman, they have nothing but good things to say about Grayson Halton. They call him G baby. And then I think Jonah Laulu, like he was there at the Big 12 Media Day. And You talk to look, Todd Bates during the spring raved about Laulu. You were there, Jesse. He raved about Laulu and he raved about Kelvin Gilliam. And Kelvin Gilliam wasn't even playing at that point. He was injured. So to me, I think if the interior defensive line is as good as they say it's going to be, this defense should be 5 times better, 10 times better than it was last year. I think if Oklahoma has for what they need to do, they've got to have a top they got to have a top 50 defense to accomplish what they want to accomplish. If they don't have a top 50 defense, you can throw everything out the window. And I actually think they're going to have a top 50 defense this year. I said it. That's my bold prediction right there. Oklahoma will have a top 50 defense. I don't know if that's bold considering the talent who's running it, but after last year, it seems like it'd be bold. They were crap. So I don't know. That's where I think. And I think the other thing is I think you have to utilize Austin Stockner. You've got to be able to throw over the middle. Oklahoma could not throw over the middle last year. They just couldn't. For some odd reason, Dillon Gabriel was high. We're just off target over the middle. Now he's got a guy that's got a huge catch radius that is just going to be able to take the shots and the hits and come down with the catch. They've got a huge target there. Way bigger than Braden Willis, way bigger than anybody that they had last year. And I think you got to utilize that to open up the exterior, the outside guys, and make it a lot easier on the Gavin Freemans, the Jalil Farouks of the world. Because I think at the end of the day, we all know that Gavin Sawchuk and Javonte Barnes are going to eat. They're gonna get their yards. They're too good, and the offensive line is going to be too good this year. So that's where I think things for them to be successful in what they have to do. That's where I think most improvement needs done. So before we close this out, guys, let's talk Jaden Jackson. Obviously, the 4-star defensive lineman committed to Oklahoma today out of IMG Academy. Teammates of one and very, very, very good friends of one David Stone at IMG Academy, 5-star defensive lineman. So we were the first on it that said, hey, look, Oklahoma, you should probably watch out for them. They're making a run, because I got a call earlier this week that said, and of course, I go to the board. I said, look, I still don't think Oklahoma's going to get it. Texas has been too confident. Even though the source that I got it from knew that the kid was committed. It basically told me the kid was committed. But like the fans, Parker and I are a little jaded when it comes to D-line recruiting. So there was like, we'll believe it when we see it. So we put out a little disclaimer, and I literally said, if it happens, it happens. If it and it'll be a surprise. If it doesn't, move on. You guys didn't expect it. And the point of why I said I thought it would be Texas and all that to begin with, and that was just the first update. The second update, I said I thought it would be Oklahoma. But yeah, that I thought, it's better to be cautious because of all the past incidents that we've had with defensive line recruiting. It's been rough for Oklahoma. I think Dejon Terry and Jaden Jackson have probably been two of the biggest surprises. Would you agree, Parker?
Yeah, no doubt about that. And isn't it convenient that both of those surprises are defensive linemen?
Yeah. Props to Todd Bates. That dude's he's been getting it done this offseason. And so knowing that David Stone went and basically helped host Jaden Jackson on his official visit, like, where do we stand with that, Parker?
I mean, look, everybody was asking earlier today, does Jaden Jackson's commitment help with David Stone at all? And my response to that was, I think David Stone helped with Jaden Jackson more than Jaden Jackson helps with David Stone.
Facts.
Like, if it's not already evident from his social media activity that he was heavily and actively recruiting Jackson to Oklahoma, And if it isn't evident on a greater scale that he's doing a lot of recruiting on Oklahoma's behalf outside of just the Jackson situation, then open your eyes, people. The writing is right there on the wall in very large letters in front of you.
Yeah, he tweeted, David Stone tweeted out, "If you're not with us, you're against us," the other day. And we've been trying to figure out who that was about. I think it was a general shot originally at Joseph, Jonah, and Jonah for not joining their power line that they call it for the defensive line. And now, obviously, now you got two guys that have gone public. Williams Nwaneri will be going public on August 1st. And we think that's Oklahoma as well. So legitimately, they could have, seriously, 2, possibly 3 5-stars on the D line when it's all said and done. And to think, when we originally started in the spring talking about that possibility, Parker, we both were like, yeah, it's a possibility. Don't expect it. You can kind of see Oklahoma fans now kind of with their chest out, just kind of confident now, like, oh, it's a possibility and almost a reality at this point. Even though so much can happen down the line, they have that confidence because of landing Jaden Jackson, a guy that's going to move up a ton in the rankings. He already is. He's the number 196 player in the country on Rivals, or 191, something like that. And everybody seems like they're going to be moving him up. Every time everybody watches him, like, dude, that guy's really good. We probably should move him up in the rankings. They say he's got some of the heaviest and biggest hands that there is. Like, this is just huge for Oklahoma on so many levels, in my opinion. In particular, to get back in to IMG. What other player, Parker, over the last 2 cycles do you think that could have been one of the biggest kickstarters of a huge run recruiting than what obviously Jaden Jackson just did?
Yeah, I mean, again, you go back to the fact that this is kind of out of nowhere in the sense that 72 hours ago, it didn't look like OU was going to be the choice for Jaden Jackson. And
Yeah,
man, what a blessing it is if you're Oklahoma to have your biggest surprise of the cycle, I would say to date, be a blue chip defensive lineman. And I was having one exchange in the DMs with a fan earlier today, and they're like, I don't really see Jaden Jackson as a starter. I'm like, you know what? That's all fine and well. At this point, if you're Oklahoma and if you're an OU fan, you'd rather be talking yourself into the number 10 defensive tackle in the nation not being a starter in the long run than some 3-star not being a starter in the long run, right? Like, it's
right.
you have first world problems now at Oklahoma as far as the defensive line is concerned. So yeah, I love the pickup of Jackson. Obviously, he's kind of second fiddle to Stone and potentially Dominic McKinley in this class if Oklahoma is able to land one or both. But in his own right, Jaden Jackson's a really talented football player, and you don't have to look any further than the offer sheet to see that. He had some very big time programs that recruit defensive linemen well year in and year out. That were after his services. And in the end, he felt that Oklahoma was the best fit for him. You tip your cap to Todd Bates. This is a really big win for him, and one that ought to keep the haters quiet for a little while longer. And now it becomes a question of whether you can land the IMG duo in Jackson and David Stone. By the way, I don't really count Phil Picciotti as an IMG commit because he was committed to OU before he ever enrolled at IMG. Don't really count Gavin Marshall because he isn't a scholarship guy. You're talking about scholarship commits straight out of IMG Academy. Oklahoma hasn't had one since the 2018 cycle with Buki Radley Hiles and TJ Pledger. So it's been a minute since they were able to crack this nut.
Yep, no doubt. Still, I think Oklahoma has a lot moving for them. Obviously, on the recruiting trail next week, Zion Ragon's going to announce on July 18th. And then on July 21st, obviously 5-star running back Taylor Tatum will announce his decision as well. And I like Oklahoma for both. And I have my reasons for liking where Taylor Tatum's at with Oklahoma. Look, it's already out there. I want to say it was like 10 days ago, if not longer, that I text Parker after I was told that Taylor Tatum's sister got accepted, and now it's out there. The fans they've done their sleuthing, that they do, and they've gone through the OU directory and saw that Taylor Tatum's sister's enrolled. What I will say to that is, with USC being a private school, there's no way to know if she enrolled out there as well. I don't think she did, but there's no way to prove that one way or the other. So I think if you're an Oklahoma fan, I would not use that as the main reason to be very confident, but it's one of the reasons why you should have some confidence, if that makes sense. So I like Oklahoma for that because I think OU's baseball program, SEC, all that works in their favor. Playing for DeMarco Murray, the relationship that DeMarco Murray has with Taylor Tatum's dad, even though it dates back for years, doesn't matter. It's still a relationship, one way or the other. It's a really good relationship. And then you have Williams Nwaneri on August 1st. Like that could be one epic 3-week run with Jaden Jackson, Zion Raggins, Taylor Tatum, Michael Patterson McDonald on the 31st, and then Williams Nwaneri on the 1st. And that doesn't even count, Parker, the players that could just say, hey, I'm going to announce on this date, down the line, because that's what they do. They surprise everybody. Would that be one of the best? Would that be the best run in the last 3 years as far as a 3-week run? Even better than last year's?
That might be one of the
July?
best 3-week runs in the history of OU recruiting, Brandon.
That's fair.
Like just consider a world in which, and I brought this up. I'd be curious to know your thoughts. If you're David Stone and you really are as pro OU as you have made yourself out to be, especially in recent weeks, wouldn't it be kind of nice? Like, let's just say Williams Nwaneri indeed commits to Oklahoma on August 1st. If you're David Stone and you really want to bring the house down, why not commit the same day? The top 2 defensive linemen in the entire country on the same day for Oklahoma fans? Come on now. That's the biggest, like, August 1st in that case would be not just the biggest day of the year for Oklahoma football recruiting, it would be the biggest day of the year in college football recruiting.
Dude, Parker, OU fans would be doing a petition to have August 1st Miguel Chavis and Todd Bates Day. Like, they would be the capital, making sure it became a holiday in the state of Oklahoma if that took place. But I do agree with you that I think that would be huge. I think it'd send a shot to everybody in college football that Oklahoma was for real. And I think it would lead to, Zena Mosalou potentially not picking Texas and picking Oklahoma, which is also a reality. His brother is going to potentially be the starting offensive tackle for Texas. And this dude may end up playing against his brother and his brother having to block him down the line in the Red River. How wild would that be? Very unexpected. And we haven't even talked about Eli Bowen potentially announcing in the next month. He didn't have a date, but you hear that he wants to get it over with. There's a lot of moving parts in this Oklahoma recruiting class and a lot of things that can really, really spurn Oklahoma. I did the calculations, by the way. And if they land all the guys that we expect them to land, they are the number 4 class in the country again. That's how you win a national title.
Yep.
Right there. That would be 4 straight years of top 10, 2 straight years of top 5. That's how you win a natty. And you hit on guys that may be underrated, like a White Gilmore and so on and so forth. So, I mean, that's how you win a national title. All right, guys, that's going to do it. I think we've covered the gambit of everything. If you're not a subscriber to this YouTube channel, or if you're not subscribed to our podcast, please like, subscribe, give us 5 stars. Make sure so that way you get notified every time we drop a video, whether they're dropping their quick takes or quick slants, excuse me, whether that's Jesse and Parker on their quick slants or the podcasts or the lives or whatever, or Know Your Recruit that I do with some of the recruits. Got a David Stone. I'm going to have more to come here in the weeks moving forward. You want to be subscribed to the YouTube channel. You want to be subscribed to the podcast, because all those will be on the audio form. They'll be on the video form. That way you're kept up to date on everything OU Insider and all the content that we bring to you guys media wise. You also want to be subscribed to OU Insider VIP. Look, fall camps roll around. Commit season just got started, and it's going to be epic for Oklahoma if things keep trending in the direction they are. If you want to stay on top of it, OU Insider is where it's at. If you want to stay on top of fall camp, OU Insider is where it's at. Look, Jesse, myself, Parker, we're all going to have you covered, whether it's team, whether it's recruiting. We've got you. Promise you. We're going to be everywhere that we can be as far as covering the team. We're going to be everywhere that we can be as far as covering recruiting. And it's all going to be first on OU Insider. So if you're not subscribed, $9.95 a month or $99.95 for the year. All right, Parker, that's going to do it for Jesse Crittenton, for Parker Thune. My name is Brandon Drum. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast, brought to you by Ollipop. You guys have a blessed day.